guys, just coming back to do another guide, and this one, as you can see, I'm doing Thor, who is he's one of my favorite gods, and he also just got a really big buff in this upcoming patch in like a week, adding damage to his wall, so I figured it'd be a good time to go over him. So yeah, first let's go over the abilities. First is his passive, which it is just it gives you power based on the amount of gods that are around you. So 10 power per god at a max of 3, so you can get 30 power. So yeah, that's his passive. His hammer, his one ability is his hammer, which is also his kind of mobility, but it's also his biggest damage. So yeah, you throw a hammer out, and then anytime during the hammer's path while it's out, you can press 1 again, and you'll teleport to it. It does damage on the front and back side of the hammer. And for gods, it does double damage on the backside, and for minions, it's the same damage. So it's like, yeah. And then the 2, it is a stun, but also creates a wall. So you can block people off, but you can't walk through this or anything. And yeah, it's also a stun. A range stun. And then his 3 is just a spin that does damage. It does more damage at the end, it's only in the front at the end. I can show this in normal cast, but actually didn't change it. But yeah, the damage is 360 at the beginning for the first 2 ticks, and then the third tick is just like a cone in front of him. So, yeah, if like you're to the side, like, okay, wait, 3, so, yeah, okay, it only hits the front 3 times. Okay, so maybe it's not a full cone, but like a semicircle type of thing. And then his ult is like a semi-global. You go into the air, and then yeah, wherever you land, you'll stun whoever you hit. You get gods, they're stunned, and then you get this lightning that procs off your autos and your abilities. Okay, I forgot to talk about the 2 change, which is adding damage to it. So yeah, this will now do damage and can proc your ult ticks also, and item effects. So yeah, those are his abilities. Also, while I was mentioning the 2 change, what's also good about the 2 change is that you can be over walls. I saw Chaos say this, who's like a game coder, and he's like a past pro. But yeah, now when you wall over the wall, it'll do damage, so you'll actually see who you hit, and you can see the target, like the damage number, right? So you know where to actually put your hammer, because right now, if like you don't have vision of them, actually, when you wall over the wall, you kind of have to guess if you hit them sometimes. And it can be awkward to know like what side of the wall they're on and stuff if your vision's not very clear. So yeah, that's a good bonus for that. So generally, I'd say the abilities are fairly straightforward, but for like mechanics, I mean, the baseline is that basically you want to be really patient, because his 2 and his 1 are actually kind of hard to hit, and if you hit them, it's a lot of his kit. Like missing your wall is a big deal because yeah, you combo your 1 off it, which is Thor's biggest burst, more or less, outside of his like ult. And then also it's your mobility, right? So yeah, if you maybe you miss your wall, then you try to throw your hammer out and don't hit the double tap, or like you TP in weird spots, you're gonna like you're kind of just gonna die, because yeah, that's your mobility. So if you hammer in a spot that's bad, yeah, you just gotta be really careful about it. So yeah, patience is just really important as a whole. But yeah, his main combo, I guess I never really said, is just his 2 into his 1, because it stuns to full get that, and then you can get an auto when you teleport also. So you want to teleport right at the end. And honestly, you can go into juggle practice and mess with it also. I'm going to do reduce cooldowns. Yeah, practicing just the teleport, because if you auto too quick, you like jump weirdly. If you auto like before you teleport, you know? Like it actually makes it so you can't auto insta. So you just gotta get used to it. You can still mess up pretty easily in general, whether it's like off the stun or not. But generally that is the combo, just auto into a 3 after. Let's see, other than that, he also, like, his full ult combo is you use ult. You auto into your 1, auto 2, and then 3. That's if they don't have relics. That's the best. If they do have like beads Aegis and you do that, you're committing your hammer and like your wall instantly, so you're kind of stuck there. Maybe you have beads and Aegis, you can run away with it, but it can be awkward, so it's not always necessarily the best time to just full combo. If they don't have relics, you should always do it. maybe one of the autos is too greedy, where like especially if they're DR'd, you know, you can't get all the auto cancels off, so you shouldn't do it. The full combo, but it's kind of, you just gotta see based on the situation. But yeah, if you think they have relics and they're just gonna like beads Aegis or something like that, or beats jump, it's not bad to just ult into your 3, because it'll still do a lot of damage, especially late game. And then you can kind of be a little more patient with your 2-1, or you could even ult and just auto a little bit and then see. But yeah, and then outside of that, I don't know if I mentioned on the 3, it's also knock immune. I think I forgot to mention it, so it's a little bit of a defensive in that sense. But you can just immune random things like Bacchus flop, get knockup, just any knockups, obviously. So yeah, you can kind of try to save it a little bit for that, if you think it's really important to not get knocked up, which generally it's good not to. And then outside of that, it's just, I'd also say, yeah, the 2 is just hard to get used to in general, but outside of it being a stun, you can use it as a wall off, like any other wall character, you know? So you can stun him, and then they're also stuck there. Okay. He went through that one. But yeah, you can stun him, and then he's also just stuck there too, so he can't go through the wall. So you can like double use the wall that sense. You just have to find the right angle. Sometimes like it's even viable to like hammer into the wall to cut their path off, or you just miss the stun completely just to guarantee the wall, just to like be safe or try to catch dashes that way. But yeah, that's kind of it for the most part of like his applications of abilities. You kind of gotta just pick and choose which like time is right. Choose each one. You can like hammer off other people's CC and stuff like that too, so yeah. Okay, I guess we're going to builds. So I'm not 100% sure. I think more recently I'm kind of off of Transcendence with the nerf, and it's really slow compared to all the maces, which also got buffed. As well as with like Heartseeker getting buffed next patch, and Thor, Lightning, and the 2 doing damage. Proccing stuff is just really good for Thor. So I'd say Heartseeker and Crusher are probably pretty core. A lot of games you're going to need Brawlers. Titan's Bane I think is good. And then also like Jotuns. Jotuns I go back and forth. Having cooldown Thor just feels good. You can kind of hammer more aggressively because the cooldown will be up. So like, yeah, there's a chance you can just hammer in, use your kit, and then use relics and be able to hammer out after. But yeah, that being said, I think it might actually just be this build generally. The order, I think, is a little up for debate. Like, if you don't need Brawlers, you could just sack that completely, and this could be... Wait, we should upgrade on the spear, but like... Yeah, you could just go Crusher, Jotuns, and then maybe Heartseeker before Titans now. I'm not too sure. I have to test that a little bit, but Heartseeker is now going to be 2750. And you need less power, I think, for the full Heartseeker passive. So in this third slot, it might actually fit pretty well, especially with how much like health people are building. But yeah, I think I would drop Jotuns for the Brawlers if I had to make the choice. And then if I didn't have Jotuns by the last item, I would just go Erendite, I think, or Bloodforge maybe. But yeah, I think like something like this. Maybe the Crusher's better in the first slot. But I think Crusher's gonna be really important on him with the change, because it procs on his 2 now, so yeah, I think you definitely want to make use of that with Crusher and Heartseeker both. Other than this, you could maybe not go this Erendite if you didn't end up going Jotuns earlier or don't need Brawlers, and this could be like a Mantle or a Magi's. This is always fine in every jungle build too. But yeah, that's that, I think. For the builds, we can go into Strengths and Weaknesses. So Thor is pretty like decent at most stages of the game. I think especially with the extra damage with his 2. His early game just got better, right? Because he has a little more damage in his kit. But he was always pretty decent because of his passive. This extra power means early skirmishes just favor Thor. He's just good at fighting them because his autos just do more damage. So yeah, I think that only got a little bit better with adding more damage to his 2. I think it's 60 damage base at level 1. Other rank, which is what's going to be most of the time. Maybe you'll put more points into it now that it does damage. I'm not too sure on that because it also goes down in cooldown and up in stun duration. So we kind of just have to see a little bit. But yeah. I guess I didn't actually explain how to level Thor. But generally I just kind of do a mix mash of 1 and 3 for a little, and then I max out my 1. probably 3 points in the 3 max, and then max out the 1, and maybe once the 1's max, you can max for 2, I'm not too sure. For strengths and weaknesses, he is definitely good at fighting early brawls because of, like I said, his passive. And then most stages of the game, he's pretty decent. I think once you get full build, he's really strong. His ult's just going to one-shot. I was getting extra Proximus 2 is going to be able to do more damage too, so assuming you're hitting your abilities, he's pretty good in most stages of the game, especially coming in late with like ults, or ulting people without relics. But yeah, I don't think he like thrives as hard as maybe like say Erlang's or Osiris's when they're metas in the early game. But he definitely can compete with like the lesser hard pressure gods, like maybe even Pele and stuff like that. He definitely has some ability to compete with those gods. But outside of that, I think he's not gonna have too many weaknesses, honestly. Getting the extra damage to his 2. Some fights can be awkward when Thor's the one that's targeted. If like you hammer in aggressively, or maybe like if your hammer gets caught on and you're just running down the Thor, it can be awkward because his ult's like stationary, right? You have to sit here channeling this whole time so you can get hit. It's not that safe of an ability to escape with always. And fights can be awkward if they're melee on Thor sometimes, but generally he's pretty hard to pressure out in that sense. So for most stages of the game, I think he'll be pretty decently strong, assuming you can hit his abilities, which is obviously the hardest part about this god. Now for jungle matchups, I guess I'll just go look at the gods real quick for them. Like I said, he's good into most comps and jungle matchups, and most like carry matchups. Like some of the random ones like Heim, I don't think he's as bad, where like they're really safe gods because Thor doesn't have to be on top of them necessarily, or he's not going to be when he teleports within 3. But for his good jungle matchups, I think he's pretty good to Lancelot. You can wall him off his horse because the stun, which is pretty good threat on the Lance. Whenever you're able to do that, I think I've always liked the Surket matchup personally. I think it's pretty decent. Maybe it could go both ways, but also I think the range and lockdown ability for the Surket, who's like relies a lot on their mobility, is pretty good. Let's see. Like I don't think he necessarily owns some of these gods, but I think like into like Neja and Daji, because Thor you go beads on, you don't really go blink normally. He's way better into these CC gods like Daji, Neja, Fenrir, maybe even Hunbats. He like has better matchups because he wants to be going blink, and it doesn't really mess with his, or wants to be going bees and doesn't really mess with his blink relic, which most of the junglers actually want that. Did I mention? I think Robin he's pretty good into in jungle matchups, because it's really hard for Robin to time his 2, especially if he doesn't have beads, right? You can wall him, and then, like I said, you just lock him down pretty easily. The range really favors him. For some bad matchups, I'm not 100% sure. Like I said, most are pretty decent. Like I think like maybe an Nem with Magi's would be really annoying if the Nem's just finding you in 1v1 spots where you're too far up. Pele could potentially do that later on with Magi's as well. Like I said, you can get pressure out decently well by like Osiris or Erlang, but they're not really meta right now. And I don't know if they'd be able to at the moment, so I don't think those are too bad. Maybe like a Radkin matches like semi-global, but for the most part, Thor's pretty decent into the majority of these like assassin gods. Oh wait, no, I need to talk about team fights. Sorry, I really glossed over that. And so yeah, for team fights, I think you kind of have a lot of options with Thor. You can play towards your frontliners and like play towards with your carry, sorry, and wall frontliners that are walking up in front of them. So like say there's like, yeah, whatever it is, like if you're trying to get a wall, anything like that, you just have the ability to stun that like god or a mobile character in front of you, and your carries can kind of just slam them a little. And then you like if that's what you did do, you can then like wall hammer them, play back, because as soon as your hammer's down, people want to go on you. You can play back and then potentially ult and dive with your carry, or sorry, solo laner, like divers. Or you could land on even the people diving your carries. And then other than that, like you could not play for hitting frontliners, but I think you generally should look to wall people in front of your team. I think it's a little awkward to play 1v1s on Thor, but if people don't have relics, it's not too hard. And I guess you could play on the side more so, but generally he's better at starting fights with his team and then branching out past that because he has a semi-global on his ult, so he's really good range and reach. So you don't have to be on top of your solo laner to dive with him or like in a really good forward position to necessarily get that off. Even though like maybe you can be if you get a wall on their backliners, it's going to be really good, but it can be a little risky because Thor is not always favored in the 1v1s unless you're just like they don't have relics or you're like starting the fight on them. But a lot of times, like even if you wall them, uh, some people might just like insta beats to think you're gonna hammer in, and you could like bait that a little bit. But if you wall hammer somebody and don't actually get the full damage, it could be a little awkward. It might be a little different with the Thor change on his 2 doing damage, because maybe like that extra damage is what you need to just hard win 1v1s. So could have to wait and see a little bit on that. But traditionally, the way Thor is being played is that you just kind of, in my opinion, stay with your team a little bit at the start of fights. Maybe even not with them, but like over the wall. So if frontliner walks up, they don't expect you. You just wall hammer them, play back farther. Let's see how the fight progresses and ult at the right time. And ideally go for the carries, but like I said, you can land on the back line or their jungler diving your back line. But yeah, there's not too much other than that in team fights. If people don't have relics, you just will global them. Probably from like 4 items on, I think, is about when you fully one-shot them. If your team's around, obviously, you don't need to be that far in the game. Like just the CC combo of ulting into your hammer stun will keep them CC long enough where they're just gonna die. But yeah, if they don't have beads and you land on them, I think it'll be about 4 items where you just completely one-shot them. So anybody without beads, you should look to ult those guys. I guess be a little careful though, like I mentioned, talking about mechanics. When you ult in and people do have relics, it might be best to 3 and then kind of wait and see what you want to do. Or just auto in case somebody's like, say it's a Kukulkan and they beads insta ult, right? And you're 3ing, the knock immunity will be nice, but you're still getting hit by the ult, so yeah, you'll just kind of have to wait and see, or kind of play the god a little and see like how it feels. But there's a lot of little scenarios where you just kind of gotta figure out what's best to do. But yeah, I think that is about it for the Thor guide. Let me know what you think and what gods to do next. Guess we'll have to see what he's like with the change, but I'm pretty excited personally, and yeah. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll catch you later.